Building and managing a brand is a bit of a science, an art, and a craft. But one thing we mustn't forget is that it also involves an element of play. And to better understand how we can infuse play into creating brands that stand the test of time, I'm here today in this latest episode of C-Suite Conversation with Lulu Raghavan, who's the president of the APAC region at Landor. Let's dive into conversation with her. As president for APAC and managing director for Singapore and India at Landor, Lulu Raghavan works closely with market leaders and their leadership teams across the APAC region to nurture a culture of high performance and extraordinary creativity to drive business growth. Having spent over 23 years at the company across Landor offices in San Francisco, New York, London, and Mumbai in various roles, she set up Landor in India in 2008 and has grown it to be India's largest and most reputed brand and design consultancy, having worked for key clients including Tata Group, Mahindra Group, Aditya Birla Group, Godrej, Axis Bank, Indian Oil, to name a few. Her latest book, Go Further Faster, is, in Lulu's words, the book she wishes she had when she was starting in the world of work. As a practical guide to professional and personal growth, it's written for the young and ambitious who are looking to build a thriving career while overcoming diverse challenges. Marksman Daily presents C-Suite Conversations. We are here with Lulu Raghavan for the latest episode of C-Suite Conversations. Lulu, thank you for being here with us. You've had a storied career across geographies, across industries, across brands, of course. But talk us through your approach when it comes to understanding a brand's soul or its essence, when it comes to building out their narrative. How do you go about that?
What a great question, Karan, and thank you so much for having me on the show. For us, a brand's core is all about relevant differentiation. What we mean is we strive hard to figure out how that brand is going to be relevant to all of its customers in a way that's very differentiated from everyone else out there. And this combination of relevance and differentiation truly sets the brand apart. And we believe that when you have a positioning and essence of what the brand is about that is rooted in relevant differentiation, it sets up the brand for enduring competitive advantage. We're not just saying this, we actually have reams and years of data to back this up. We have a tool called the Brand Asset Valuator. What we see is that strong brands over-index on relevance and differentiation, which make up brand strength. And when brand strength powers a brand, it has an impact on the business value. So everything goes back to relevance and difference. That's what we strive to understand and uncover to position a brand and set it apart.
All right. One more thing that I wanted to touch upon is tactility, so to speak, because we've seen over the last decade and more the rise of digital screens, a greater amount of screen time, so to speak. Now, of course, you can't do away with digital in today's day and age, but how do you balance those dual demands, so to speak, of tactility while respecting the need to have a strong digital presence?
You're spot on. Actually, I think we've over-indexed on screen time. In fact, yesterday I was doing a test drive of a car, which the brand shall be unnamed, and sitting in the back seat, there were two screens in front on either side, and I asked the guy who was taking me around if those could be removed, and he said no, it was compulsory. If you bought the car, you had to have both screens.
Correct.
And I said, it's a non-starter. I'm not buying this car if I don't have that option. So it shows you how we've gone to the other end of the spectrum. But you're absolutely right. Figuring out where in that customer journey you can have that physical touch or experience for the brand is very, very important. Think about Indigo. When you're on an Indigo flight and you ask for some snacks and you see that beautiful box nuts about you.
Oh yeah.
How quirky is that?
It's a very, very playful brand presence.
Playful, you can take that home. So there's a memory of Indigo at home. Those nuts are delicious and it's something that sticks in your mind. Right. So brands have to look for those moments in which they can reach consumers emotionally in a very relevant and different way.
As one is wont to do ahead of these interactions, I of course read up extensively about you. I stumbled upon your play everyday philosophy. I found it very fascinating. Talk us through that a bit, how you can infuse elements of play, presence, daily engagement on both fronts when it comes to being very customer-centric or the customer experience, and also when it comes to the brand ethos.
Thank you, firstly, for doing a little bit of your research. My play everyday philosophy is rooted in what I believe is my motto, which is carpe diem, which is seize the day. And I believe that the day and the arc of your day actually determines your life. So if you want to write a book, start by writing a page a day.
Correct.
If you want to be fitter, do 10 minutes of exercise a day. The other part of play is also about having fun, about being lighthearted. And I think we take ourselves too seriously. Same for brands. Over the years, branding has been this very serious thing. It's
Slightly
been about
stuffy at times.
Stuffy. It's a cathedral that was built and then you're polishing it. You couldn't do anything to it. It was going to last for years and years. But that rigid construct doesn't work anymore in the world that we live in. Brands have to be agile. They have to be fluid. And therefore, we're seeing an entirely new playbook where there's also a recognition, especially after COVID, that brands need to be vulnerable. They need to be authentic, transparent. They should be able to laugh at themselves. They have to be more human.
Yeah.
And so I think that philosophy of playing every day where you engage emotionally, you make the most out of your day, you have fun, and you're natural to yourself, I think is something that's porting over from our world to the world of brands. And the more natural brands are, I think the higher the chance of their affinity with consumers.
Very true, very true. I'm sure that over the many years you've spent working in the industry, you've had some wonderful ideas that didn't quite get taken up and some that flew for whatever reason. They took on a life of their own. If, hypothetically speaking, Lulu Raghavan had this brand laboratory where she could have these crazy brand experiments going on, what would your top 3 experiments be and why would you go with them?
Some of the things that I've been thinking about over the years that I'd want to test. So the first is the elasticity of brands. In the West, brands tend to be more narrow in their scope. They stand for one thing, they are in one category typically. But in India, you have brands that are so elastic, all the way from petrochemical to jewelry to apparel, all under the same brand. I've always been curious as to just how much brands in India can stretch. The Tata brand stretches across almost everything, but other brands can't stretch so much. So in a laboratory, I'd want to see if there was some method to the stretchability of brands. So I think that's one. The other, I would want to understand which touch points have disproportionate impact on the consumer. So if we say airlines, for example, and we talked about how Indigo had this nut, does that actually have an impact on the customer's affinity to the brand and therefore their propensity to use Indigo every time?
Versus somebody else maybe at a different price point.
Or actually within Indigo, they may have 500 touch points. They have check-in, they have the in-flight experience, they have the uniform of the crew, they have the design of the menu. If you look at all of these and we had a laboratory setting, could we figure out which ones actually move the needle on revenue? Which is most important? Is the uniform or the smile or the menu of the in-flight entertainment more important for customers? And therefore, where should brands invest? The third one I would say is just innovation. Brands stand for something. Volvo is safety, Dove is real beauty. If you take those ideas and you could experiment, what all could the brand do? What else could Dove become? Whether it's products or services or experiences, I think a laboratory is a great environment for brands to experiment, but I'd want to stay very close to what the brand stands for. So brand-led innovation experiments to come up with things that are very ownable and a first for the brand, which is what we call ownable first. I would love to use the laboratory space to do those kind of brand experiments.
That's a lot of food for thought right there. Let's turn the lens a little bit onto you, so to speak. If you were to look back, I'm sure we all have advice that we wish we would give our younger self. Don't worry too much. loosen yourself up a bit, play a bit more. If you were to talk, somehow went through this portal of space and time and talk to a younger Lulu Raghavan, what advice would you give her?
Several years ago, I encountered this word humbition.
Okay.
It's a combination of humility and ambition.
That's lovely.
I wish I was a lot more of both when I was younger. I wish I was more ambitious. I think I was going from one level in my career to the next, but did I have this big dream for what I wanted to be, and was I a go-getter getting it? Perhaps not in the early stages, right? So I wish I'd been more ambitious.
Okay.
Ambition is really important because that gives you the drive, it makes you wake up every day, and it makes you show up at work and do your best. On the other hand, balancing it with humility is important. I don't think I was ever arrogant, but I wish that I had left my ego at the door in many situations, internally and with clients. It tended to get in the way.
Okay.
And I think if I'd learned those two things earlier in life, I would have been happier. So humility and ambition, humbition, which I think is a very important quality for leaders to embody.
So you've spoken a bit about, we've touched upon ego, of course. We've touched upon humbition. That's a lovely concept, which I will carry with me after this interview as well. But if you had to offer a takeaway, for our viewers, for aspiring professionals back home, what would those words of wisdom be?
My words of wisdom would be that it's really important to be self-aware and think about how you're showing up every day in every conversation, because that defines you, your personality, your aura. It signals to others what you stand for.
Right.
And if you're intentional about it, you can then channel it in every situation, and that builds what we call your personal brand, which gives you a competitive advantage. So I'm from the world of brands, and I've seen companies use branding for competitive advantage. I think individuals should also tap into the power of branding to give themselves competitive advantage in the workplace.
Correct. Because if you think about it, influencers, who are so big in today's day and age, are simply personal brands, nothing more, nothing less. Lovely. All right, Lulu, lovely chatting with you, having your thoughts with us. And thank you for being part of this episode of C-Suite Conversations.
Thank you so much, Karan.
Lulu Raghavan's emphasis on uncovering a brand's soul, on creating tactile memories in an increasingly digital world, and on infusing playfulness in every brand interaction is to be admired in a world where brands are becoming increasingly serious, stodgy, and stuffy. Thank you so much for being here with us in this episode of C-Suite Conversations, and I hope to see you in the next one.